we're trying to teach and what we're trying to understand. So let's take a look at this, and it's our pop quiz, and feel free to negotiate and discuss it with each other. What activities you would choose as a bridge activities between the focus on mechanics and kind of transitioning into writing as a communicative art? So the first place, you can give something like this, the prompt. You live in Canada, you want to set up a meal delivery with a local carrier, fill out the flex delivery form. And you can even link them. I'm not connected to the internet, unfortunately, here, but you can see that there's a link. It links to the regular site of this company, and this is the form that you're supposed to fill out, and it gives you a sample. Or would you go with something like this? Show how well you can spell, or write out your name, address, or any other words you know how to write in your new language. Which one would you like better and why as a prompt? On the left or on the right, and why?
Well, I would say left, because to me it's more authentic.
It's more authentic for one. What else?
I think the second, the right, the one on the right is kind of like very explicit about what you really want your students to focus on.
It's very controlling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't really give any freedom. So, if we go from here into formulating our strategies, probably we want to provide context. We want to tell our students a little story or a little situation where they would use their writing, right? It's not just, oh, write whatever you want. Like, why are you writing? And we're trying to connect their writing to real life activities and real life applications. We also want to bring some aids from the real life, be it visual or audio, so they have support, they have something to hook up their writing with. And of course, if you can provide models. Can you think of something else which might work for effective practices? Again, like if we go back into, you have a model, you have a real life application, you have a context versus you just, okay, like write me your name and whatever you see in the classroom. Anything else you might think of you want to do?
And to me it has more like communication aspect than writing.
Yeah. Maybe we can add a strategy of bridging out from writing into different skill, so that you connect writing with other skills that the students can support through writing. So this is an overview, kind of simplistic, but nevertheless, who and why study second language writing. There is sort of studies that I identify as studies that focus on mechanics of writing. There are lots of them on corrective feedback, whether corrective feedback works. Many studies on technology, on the use of technology for various aspects of writing, whether technology helps. Then writing as a communicative art, unfortunately, it's most of it on second language, English as a second language, and it's on cognitive models and processing involved in writing. Then contrastive rhetoric, this is tons of works on this, tons. Very new stuff, interesting, but I'm not sure how we second language instructors feel about it. Multiple literacies and socialization. Basically, the pathos of these works is let students be, let them write as they want. Don't try to tell them that they have to comply with native speaker norms. They have their own norms, allow them express themselves freely. So we might find it slightly difficult to sign for, because we are trained to teach our students how native speakers express themselves and what are the conventions for a native speaker. So this is a difficult decision we have to make and decide where the compromise could be made. And post-cognitivist and post-process, also very interesting research. It's within cultural theory, again, on that kind of fights against the desire to bridge or bring non-native speakers closer to native speakers in their writing. That basically claims that everyone has a freedom for self-expression, and our new languages that we acquire, it's part of our identities, and we shouldn't feel the need to comply. We have to be free in how we express themselves. So it's again like something we can all discuss. Finally, bridging abilities, and this study will start with emergentism. That kind of addresses both mechanics and artistic aspects of writing, and another very interesting strand of research on corpus in technology. Corpus, language corpus, we'll know it, right? So pretty much, I don't know whether all of your languages have corpuses and whether those corpuses are reliable, but basically corpuses is the pieces of language, authentic language uses that you can use in your classrooms with your students. So let's take a look at the study that is, I think, very inspiring. Oh, well, it's a few bad words about limitations of second language writing studies. Like I said, most of them are on ESL. So, and we do realize that languages with complex alphabets, or that don't have alphabets but have other symbolic system for writing, might not be same in terms of acquisition. And also, most of the studies focus on the upper proficiency. Again, what do we do with low proficiency? And do we teach them writing at all? Do we teach them creative writing at all? Or we just forget them? And very small numbers of study participants, which is also not sufficient. And it shows us that, yes, it's probably can be, you draw these ideas or these conclusions based on 5 students that you observed. It might not be sufficient. And data collection techniques, I wouldn't say always sound. There are many limitations. So study I really loved. It's within the emergentism theoretical framework. The study, it's not really typical for second language acquisition research, because it just observes what happens and kind of allows the language to unravel, and the researcher basically collects all the data of the unraveling language and describes it honestly, what happens and how it happens. So in this study there were 5 participants, all of them Chinese graduate level students. They all came to America with intermediate high proficiency, which is relatively high already. They were all capable of writing already. So, and they participated in this study. It's a time series design when over the period of 1 semester that lasted 6 months, actually it sounds more like a year, almost. The students took 4 essays, and all these essays were the same. Basically, they wrote on the same topic 4 times, and then the researcher compared the patterns, how and what was happening. So the conclusion of this study, I think it's very nice for all of us. It shows that basically there is no linear development. You don't see it. What you see, like today the student writes very nice essay, but next day, no. It's like all weird and lots of mistakes, and it's not good at all. And she compared both. She compared written production and oral production. So, and even those were not coordinated. So the student might speak really well, but write really poorly. So there is like nothing that you would expect be nice and kind of clear. So she basically says it's all fuzzy and muddy. It's not easy at all. It's happening very difficult. It's a difficult process of learning. It doesn't happen nicely and beautifully. it takes a lot of hard and ugly work.
But like, I mean, when we check the evaluations at the end of the semesters, so we receive feedback from students.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, like, if we ask a student to write the same topic over and over again.
agree.
I mean, so like, what was the result of this, like, survey that you just showed us? So like, what is this? So
Mhm.
writing the same topic 4 times? Was it
Mhm,
4
4
times
times,
in 6
yeah.
months? And there's no, like, linear
Mhm.
improvement. So there should be something wrong, right? Between
Looks like,
Like,
yeah,
what
looks
should
like
be-
something is missing. Yeah,
yeah, something is missing, and what is that thing?
It's a great question. Like, why it's happening? Like, how come students write the same essay and they can't get it right? Like,
Or there's no improvement, or like, like anything.
yeah. Well, let's take a look and we'll discuss like what's happening. So there were 4 levels of assessment, or 4 levels at which the research looked at the production. Fluency. And fluency was measured as average number of words per T unit. And T unit being in minimal independent clause with whatever dependent clauses it might have. Accuracy, the proportion of error-free T units against the overall number of T units. Then grammatical complexity, average number of clauses per T unit. So how many things can be piled into T unit. And complexity of vocabulary, type token ratio. And look at what she has. So those are all 5 people, and this black line with boxes represents the average, and all other lines represents individual development. And you can tell that for measurements taking, and then all these measurements are linked, and you can tell, okay, first slide, individual growth in accuracy. Yeah, they kind of like in October most of them went up, but some of them did not. And by November, 4 of them went up, but 5th one kind of dropped. So huge individual variation. Look at the fluency development. Yes, one person just really flew, and the rest were kind of struggling. The down one developed, you can tell, was developing. The top one was developing really excellently, and the middle was showing some kind of serious inconsistencies. Very interesting, right? Let's look at the next slide. Grammatical complexity. Again, yeah, it looks like overall, if we are looking at the average, yes, they improved, but individual variation is really great. And vocabulary complexity even more so. You see how one person really excels and the rest is just, and again, if you look at all of these 4 measures, vocabulary complexity looks like the hardest to get. Interesting, right? Not the grammar, but vocabulary. And what do we usually teach? We teach grammar. We don't teach vocabulary. And look at this. She puts now together on the vertical, you see grammatical complexity, and on the horizontal line, in the first slide, it's vocabulary complexity. Look how interesting it is. So for most of the people, except for one outlier, they all grew in grammatical complexity, most of them. But in terms of vocabulary complexity, none of them pretty much expanded. It's very, very limited. And look at the fluency. Yes, pretty much everyone developed the fluency. That's what grammar gives you. Like the more complex grammar you use, the more fluent you sound like, the more fluent you look like in your writing, because you're producing complex language. However, in terms of vocabulary, in terms of sophistication, you're not that good, and they were not really developing. So what is our take in terms of general ideas or technical things? So perhaps make sure that you don't expect your students, like you give them something and they will acquire it and just move on. No, you see, it's like it's so difficult. The process is not linear. It's going to be lots of detours and lots of droppings, and be prepared. And again, with so many individual variations, perhaps it should be addressed. Perhaps we should address each student's goals and abilities and train them individually. Also, it's nice if your students have realistic expectations of themselves, and they're kind of cognizant of what they're doing in your class. And perhaps if the students were more prepared mentally, they would have done better in this study. So, in terms of technical things, focus on grammar doesn't really contribute to sophisticated self-expression. So yeah, spend all the time you want on grammar. All you're gonna get is probably more production. They would sound more fluent, but they will not sound smarter or more sophisticated. That's where you have to work on vocabulary. So make your choices. So mechanics of writing, there are tons of words, and I wouldn't take any of them at their face value, because again, what I'm noticed that most of them are done on very limited features, like first of all, it's all English, and it would be articles or third person singular, like he likes versus I like. And it would be studied on advanced students, which I think, again, kind of inadequate, because by then you would expect students to have it. So it's kind of already not developmental, it's past the development process. So you're not assessing the development, you're assessing the state of acquisition. So I don't think it's very powerful. Nevertheless, let's take a look. It's interesting that, again, there is no agreement. Truscott came out with very strong claim that feedback never helps. If anything, it impedes learning. Because our students develop based on linguistic mechanisms that already in their heads. And if they're not ready yet developmentally, no matter how you try, they're not going to learn anything. So you just have to wait until they're ready. And again, because we don't have enough data to know what is the normal acquisition process, which features are acquired first and which features are acquired next, then we shouldn't interfere. And it's true, it's like you can hear that, oh, it's Krashen, it's Chomsky, it's like all these ideas of cognitivism that we are born with language, so what can you do? Nothing. Versus other people who are behaviorists, first of all, and people like most of us in communicative approach, which, maybe we don't have a strong theory behind it, but we do know that if we correct students, they learn. And we kind of hope, which always helps. So theory-wise, again, on the left hand we have Krashen, we have Chomsky, of course, we have Gus, who stresses positive evidence. So just give students input and leave them alone, and they will be fine. And on the other hand, we have all other research that says, no, you have to correct errors as soon as possible, because otherwise they will fossilize and your students will acquire the wrong form. Also, very powerful hypothesis like output hypothesis. Before the students notice the gap between their production and their target production, they will never develop. So they have to get the feedback saying, no, it's bad. You have to say something else. And Schmidt's hypothesis of noticing that students, in order to develop, you have to notice that no, your language is not really the same. So unless it happens, there is no acquisition. And again, you can still find works on both sides. It's amazing. So until now, there's no agreement.
I have-
Go ahead, yeah, sure, yeah.
I'm so sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt.
go ahead.
I was wondering if there are some theories that would be probably right in the middle. Right. Just, whenever necessary, you feel like, oh no, I have to correct this, and then, because it's going to help, just
Good
proceed.
point,
And
good
then
point.
sometimes also let those, go down, and then let the students, progress.
Hold the thought, because we're coming to it.
Ah,
Yes,
I'll
yes.
hold it tight.
Yes, no, it's great that you're coming up with this. So what kind of feedback should we provide? Again, there is focused feedback and unfocused feedback. Should we just correct all verbal forms? Like we decide, oh, today I am correcting past tense. If there is no good past tense, I'm correcting it. Anything else, I don't care. Or I correct pretty much everything. Cases, spelling, voices, aspects, everything. No agreement here either. And we are running a study with one of my graduate students, and our findings are so, I would say, tragic, because out of 3 groups, the groups that did the best was the one that didn't receive feedback. It's kind of, yeah, I hope after this pilot, the things will change and feedback will prove efficient. But again, I can tell that it's very, very,
Better self-regulatory strategies.
Yes.
They develop them on their own. That's right.
it's, yeah, no clear cut here. Again, how should we correct? Should it be direct? Like, no, don't say he like, say he likes. Or we should just, well, something doesn't sound good. What is it? Help me. So, and again, there is no agreement. You can go either way. The result, and here it's your turn again, right? Like, we have to decide when we should correct the errors. Like, right on the spot, should we wait? Should we have them come to your office and discuss it? Or which errors we should correct? All of them or some of them? And how we correct those errors? Like, slapping them or, I don't know. So, this is difficult, and I understand that it's probably, like, first of all, there is no research on this, and again, second of all, there are so many practices. I've been teaching in various environments, including Millbury Summer School, Swissel, regular academic teaching. And at Millbury, we would have students come to our office hours and analyze every single thing with them. So I don't see similar practices anywhere else. So I thought that was the best, because you kind of fix the problem right on the spot and you are able to negotiate with students. But again, we don't have enough data to support. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just have a question. When you said we analyze everything, what do you mean? Like just grammar, vocabulary, or everything you
Not,
listed?
not like crazy everything, not like this, but something that is pertinent. And
Okay.
For instance, when I taught 4th level, it's basically intermediate high students.
Mhm.
Of course, I wouldn't terrorize them with aspect. I would only point it when it would be like very obvious, like, oh, it's process versus achievement. So this is easy to kind of contextualize. Every other aspectual problem I wouldn't even touch, because I don't want to like mess them up. But I would definitely work with tenses, and I would work like crazy on cases, because this is like something that they have to do in the first year. Get down 6 cases and get down the agreement. So this would be my priority.
Mhm.
Everything else, I would be just, again, like I think it's level dependent and language dependent. Yeah. So which errors? And I'm borrowing this from Hendrickson and Ferris. They say that corrective feedback may be effective if it focuses on patterns of errors. So it's not every error, but error that from one writing to the next assignment to the next assignment. So yes, probably this one should be corrected. That errors that impair communication significantly. If if you feel that person makes himself or herself absolutely incomprehensible, probably it should be addressed. Errors that occur frequently in individual students' writing. So again, they may be not patent, they may be different. It could be gender or verb agreements with subject. So it could be anything, no patterns, but they're frequent for the student. Maybe we should clean it. And errors that may have stigmatizing effects, like there is this verb in Russian that just a slight difference in stress can mean either you're right or you are taking a pee, so in the bathroom. Of course you want to tell your students, no, not that one, like let's try to use another one. Because you don't want them, to sound crazy. So how to provide feedback? Directly, indirectly, focusing on one category of errors or all categories, engage students in peer correction, like all this is open to discussion. And again, there's no good research that would say, oh, this is better, this is worse. Again, I'm borrowing from Ferris when she suggests this kind of corrections. Direct correction, you would just cross out the word and give them the word, and you would just like key the error and tell, yeah, something is wrong, figure it out. Or you basically cue them, so it's verbal tense, or you just spell it out, or you comment in the margin, but it doesn't sound quite right, do something. And the green should be up, well, anyhow. So, do you want to go? So tell us, what do you think we should be doing? Like, what is the effective way to correct?
I mean, I definitely would go with like trying to sort of negotiate things right in the middle, neither on the one side, left side, or right side. Just whenever it's necessary, because that is what that does is like it does help the students sort of get confidence in what he's doing and not feel like, oh no, I'm breaking down everything. So another way to put it is like just give them confidence so that they can have the courage to keep on trying and improving themselves. The damage that it does correcting at any time is that it discourages the students and it may affect his writing process. So I think that try to see whenever it's necessary just to correct at that time is something that I would probably go for.
Probably, yeah. As long as the meaning is passed across, as long as it really doesn't disturb the native speaker, reader, then yes, probably we shouldn't obsess about errors. One study I really liked, and I think it's very important theoretically, because I don't know how many of you are linguists, so I'll switch to this slide right now, because there are different theories of language grammars, right? Grammars as analytical things versus grammars as lexicon. Basically, how do we access grammar? Do we access it holistically or we access it analytically? So we combine pieces and voila, we have language. Or we kind of come up with an idea and we grab the entire expression for the idea. So those are different approaches to language. And again, probably we all love compromises. Probably the best one to see it as a spectrum, as a continuum. So yes, there is no just language as an analytical grammar versus language as a lexicon. It's like something of a continuum. And as an example, I will give you this thing. What I'm trying to get at here is, would it be accepted if instead of, oh, wind blows today really hard, I would say something like, oh, wind does it kind of hard today. Wind gets it really hard today. Native speakers? Probably you would like blows, right?
I would say close enough for jazz. Yeah. I understand.
That's what we would refer to as a lexical grammar. You can say it in different ways, but this is how native speakers say it. And it's already usus. It's like something typical in the language. That's how language operates. And let alone phraseology. I don't even mention phraseology because phraseology is all combined units. You access them as fixed units. You don't break them up into pieces. So many linguistic features are like this. You have to kind of bring them together. You can't split them up unless you want to sound frivolous or playful, and lots of puns and humor is based on the breaking of this rule. So when we go back to learning, this very interesting study came out in 2015. Basically, the researcher asked native speakers how would they feel, like how do they feel about certain writings made by second language students. And second language students, some of them used Google as basically as a corpus. They would type in the phrase and see how many hits it would have, and they would use the highest hits and reuse this, versus like they would come up with whatever. And native speakers liked plagiarism, right? They liked what students just grabbed from the Google stuff, which is understandable because, yes, again, bringing us back to this thing, native speakers do have certain patterns of speaking, and it's nice if we know it. It's nice that our students know it. So what is our take? Don't stigmatize Google, and be open and creative about resources that you permit in your classrooms, right? Another thing, there are corpuses, but some of them are very complicated. In English, there are tons of corpuses. BYU has corpus, UPenn has corpus of English, various Englishes. English for different uses in business or in academic writing, so you can find tons of those. In English, it's relatively easy to search for. Other languages almost don't have corpuses. Like Russian has just one corpus. I don't know your languages do or not. Do they have whether they have corpuses or not? But this is definitely a great resource. However, it might not be very obvious how to use it. And it might be discouraging for students because they will have so many choices. And again, we know that our students don't like choices. They want to be told, no, this is right, this is wrong, that's it, it's very simple, don't worry about it. Students, and when they're presented with a range, they don't like. So be careful how to use it. But definitely look into it because it's a great source. And I don't know, myself as a second language writer, I use English corpuses a lot in my writing to make sure I sound in writing as close to the target as possible. And of course, probably the best thing for us to approach it, develop our teaching materials that focus on this phraseology. That not phraseology like sayings, but phraseology as wind blows, and it dawned on me, something like that. And perhaps introduce even a rubric in your assessment so the students know this is the target, that's what we want you to be able to do. We don't want you to say something I'm used to do in instead of or something I'm looking to seeing you tomorrow. This would be the target versus I'm looking to see you tomorrow. So this is the phraseology of language, and perhaps you want to make it a rubric and make sure that students know what you want them to produce. How many of you actually have this luxury of teaching students to write beyond carving letters?
So are you saying like writing at a good sentence level or at a good paragraph level or even a good essay level?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So probably not many of us actually able to do it. However, we're trying, and And I would encourage you to do it as early as possible, even in the first year. That's basically our goal, to introduce creative writing as early as possible. And again, we scaffold it, we make it easier for students to fall into. Go ahead.
I think it's important to point out that these are skills that native English speakers do not have.
Thank you.
My wife taught at a local junior college for several years, essay writing for English, and everybody who came from high school, they didn't have the skill. And she had ways to teach them that skill, and if, freshmen can learn this, so can your students, and there are ways to teach this in any
Totally
language.
agree, yes.
It's just not simple.
Exactly, it's not simple even for non-native speakers. So the earlier we introduce it, the better. And let's hope they will probably bring the skills they learn in our classrooms into their English writing. So this is very depressing when you look at the studies into the differences between second language writers and first language writers. So you can see that in terms of cognitive models and processing, they are really different. They plan differently. They don't plan. Basically, they just try to write whatever, generate whatever. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna write about this, and I'm gonna write as such person, and I'm gonna address this audience. This never ever happens. So they just try to generate as much production, as much whatever language they can. Oftentimes, they don't even understand the topic. They just start to write prompt by one word they know in the prompt, and instead of understanding what kind of topic is that, do I have to present an argument? Do I have to narrate? What am I doing? So they don't even think about it. They just plunge into mechanics. So this is very sad. Transcribing as a process of writing is very slow and very back and forth. They constantly not revising themselves, but they constantly look for dictionaries, or they don't know the words, so they're stuck and they're thinking about the word without going further. So there are lots of inability to actually make the process effective and relatively fast and smooth. Reviewing. So predictably, most reviewing focuses on mechanics. Practically never on embellishment of voice or composition. This is just doesn't happen. So which one should we do? As an instructor, I will explain to students that they need to plan better and learn how to self-manage, and I will show students how to revise their writing. And I will tell the students about second language acquisition research and the importance of metacognitive strategies, and I will tell them to use these strategies. Or I can try to devise activities that incorporate all stages, without probably telling the students, but I will make planning and self-management and revising activities, and maybe I will make students use metacognitive strategies through the classroom activities, and then perhaps I might not ask them to reflect on it and kind of like we do here, we formulate strategies. After we're doing something, we're revising and we're formulating strategies. So which one, left or right? Right, yeah, it's kind of, it's better done through practice rather than do this if I don't know what is required of me, how can I do it? Art of writing, contrastive rhetoric, again, this is most of research body comes from, and it's bleak, of course, predictably, our students just can't write at all. So fluency. Yes, they're less fluent than native speakers, and when they're even fluent, it's mostly single T units, so they relatively rarely go into complex sentences, complex syntax. Accuracy, of course, more errors, yes, predictably. General textual patterns. Most researchers, and you can tell by the year of research, it's relatively old, then pretty much no current data on this. That and most research would try to identify first culture patterns in second language writing and tell, oh, they're writing like Japanese, oh, they're writing like typical Romance people. Yes, that's what they're doing. Same with argument structure. Most research would be just telling, oh, it's so typical Fatih language. It's like the same as Arab speakers do in their native writing. That's the argument they're trying to present in their second language writing. It's just the same. Or, oh, it's so tentative. It's never conclusive. It's so vague and polite. And those are, of course, Japanese speakers. That's that they write in English like this. Same with narrative structures. And but the narrative structures, most research points at not at the cultural first culture influences, but the students' inability to actually see the entire story or present the entire story. They would just focus on something random and work on this instead of telling the story. So inability to summarize, to see big picture, that how we can tell it. Read orientation. Pretty much no read orientation devices like evocations, like exhortations, or attention getter devices, like none of this. Style. Shorter units, few subphrases, few exhortations against less parallel structures, more repetitive ideas. So again, very predictable. Lexicosemantic features, few synonyms, fewer collocations, less variety or sophistication. Very predictable. And if you think about it, that's what is behind it. It's very famous Kaplan study done in the late 70s. He came out with this idea, he's a psychologist, he came out with the idea that people of different cultures, they operate differently mentally, and it shows in writing, and shows in argument, how they construct argument. And he said, oh, English, yes, sure, it's very linear. They have an idea, and they bring the reader to the point. Semitic languages, Arab or Hebrew, they would be going back and forth in parallel. They would be presented on the one hand, on the other hand, so the argument will never reach the conclusion. Oriental, he said, well, they will be like working on the same idea forever. Romance and Russian were very similar because they would never go straight line. They would be sort of random, and while Romance would try to connect them, Russians, as you can see, like it's a broken line. So the connections might never be achieved. So it would be like, so we start somewhere and we come to the point, and all other things mentioned in the argument would be so irrelevant and only understood by a Russian why these things are there. So, many research in the 80s and 90s, I would assume, I suspect, is basically what they were trying to achieve is bring us to this easy and simplistic explanation of writing processes. So, I'll take. What should I do? I will explain it to students how their writing may be influenced by their first language. I will ask students to write on the same topic in their first and second language, and then I'll ask them to compare and tell me the difference or not. I explain them that they have to do something else, or I will allow students to express themselves freely. I won't be commenting on their divergence from the native speaker tenets.
But again, we need a medium, like we need a middle line between like maybe 1 and 3. Like it's completely fine to let students to express themselves freely, but at the same time, I mean, if this is a language class and if they are learning, so I mean, we need to help them improve the language. So we might need some feedback.
I agree. As long as we love freedom of speech and self-expression, we want them to be comprehensible for other people. If they are talking beautifully or writing beautifully, but no one can understand them, so what's the point of this writing. They should find this middle line, like you're saying, that it doesn't impede them from being themselves, but they're still comprehensible and lucid to their readers. So they have to take into account the readership. Who is going to read me? Another Russian who learns English and understands my weird English Russian, or anyone who uses English as a medium of communication. I'll tell this funny joke. There is this famous researcher, Russian Jewish researcher, who came to Harvard in the early 70s, and basically he's the father of all Slavic studies in America, Roman Jacobson, who is famous for knowing pretty much every live language. And there is this cynical joke about him by one of his rivals who said, yes, of course, he spoke so many variations of Russian. So no matter which language he spoke, it was basically a Russian thing. So yes, we probably don't want that. We probably want our students to be able to express themselves lucidly, relatively lucidly. So let's just go to, like, now that we've assumed so much information about how our students pull planning and how they don't really know where they're going in their writing, they like being all over the place. We know that they're lacking fluency, accuracy, sophistication, all of that. What should we do? So, we're planning our activities. How we would order this, decide on writing as a support skill versus main skill, design activities to prepare soft skills, ensure the coherence of vocabulary, grammatical, and pragmatic exercises, select level appropriate writing purpose, identify the soft skills needed to perform the task, guide students through pre, during, and post-writing activities, foster creative writing in students by promoting new ideas, and assess students' ability to perform the task. Probably too many to decide. Which one would be the first for us to decide? Select level appropriate. Yeah. Let's decide, like, what is our level, what are our students capable of. Then what should we do?
I think number 6.
Yes, we definitely want to guide them through the entire process. Yeah. But after we decided what level we're teaching, what should we think about?
How about number one?
Number one, yeah. What are we practicing? Yeah. Support skill or main skill, and so forth. And yes, you just move on and decide how lay out all these things.
What about the other slide when you talked about like teaching them about language? How can I fit that in these skills?
It's a good point. Do you want to do it? Do you think it's part of the foreign language instruction, this kind of raising of metacognitive awareness? It's a good point. Maybe it should be something within pre and post activities. You fit it not generically, but kind of precisely to this activity. Too many. Yeah, I can't really read them. Okay. So pre-writing activities. Which activities would you use and why? Number one, I will have a native speaker guest whom the students interview, and then they will write about what they've learned from this person. Number two, I will show students an authentic picture and ask them to describe it. I will play synonym-antonym game with students using words they will need in the writing activity. Example, I will do adjectives describing people, and then I'll write them to write a mock classified ad. Number four, I will practice syntactical structures that we have covered in the last unit of study. I will make sure my writing activity includes this grammar. For instance, we covered past tense, and I will ask them to write me, last time I went to see my parents, tell me a story about this, what you did. Number 5, I will have students read the text and then write about it or write like it, the same type of text, like copy this, write me something like this text. Number 6, I will have students brainstorm about the topic. Number 7, I will share assessment rubrics with the students. Number 8, I will have students devise assessment rubrics. So, which one do you like? Which one, again, depends on the context, right? Like level of our students, task at hand, is it skill acquisition or skill use? Is it mechanics versus art? Are we in the beginning of our unit or at the end? Do I just want them to kind of show me that they acquired the unit material and can produce this unit material in writing rather than orally? So it could be all effective, depends on what my goals are. During writing activities, again, we already discussed that students are poor writers. They halt a lot, they make stops, they just don't know where they're going, they don't consult with outline, they don't have plans. So we want them to develop this ability to go by plan, to like have purpose and achieve the purpose. So during writing activities, what can we do? I will have students write a short paragraph or a phrase that will capture the essence of the writing assignments. For instance, for an essay, what I did last summer, students will write, for the first time in my life, I visited a foreign country. So I will ask them to write the most important thing, or I can ask them to write me just a little paragraph if they're upper level, and then we'll develop from that. Number 2, I will ask students to work in groups and prepare a layout indicating the number of paragraphs and what they will talk in each paragraph. So, another way. I will make sure that students do not turn to dictionaries too often. And if I allow students to use dictionaries, I will make sure that they're using target language dictionary that just explains meaning and offers some kind of synonyms. Or maybe I will invent this. Number 5, I will have students gradually expand on the story, moving from a layout to identifying the central event and events that lead to it and followed it. Then students will add important details. After this, students will create a bank of useful words and phrases. I will ask them to think of a good catching opening phrase. I will time them. During the revision, so they will be right. During the revision, I will tell students to follow the assessment rubrics. Good opening, composition, appropriate syntax, appropriate vocabulary, sophisticated derivation of morphology, tense aspect, prepositional phrases, agreements, and spelling. So which is useful? Group works? Does it work? Like, would they make layouts together?
Depends on the group.
So, teaching is a difficult thing, yeah. So, post-writing activities. Which activities would you use and why? I will have students reread their essays, preparing them to be read by an audience. Add interesting details, attention getters, exhortations, or delete fluff, like extra stupid things that just don't add to the story. I will have students swap their writings and peer review them. I will select the best essay and analyze it. I will ask students to review their writings and see if it conforms with native speaker norms and conventions. You okay with everything? Number 3. You like it?
I like that. I would say here's a model, here's why it's a model.
The third one, I didn't think it was like thinking that I teach a small class, so I only have 9 students, and I will bring one of the best. And I wouldn't bring any student's assignment as a role model. And as a language student, I would be offended. I mean, I'm putting myself in their shoes. I mean, I would be offended. So I wouldn't do this.
Yeah, I think it depends on the group. Like if it's a big group, then you could probably analyze it anonymously. So then it might be actually efficient. But I wouldn't also do it in a small group because I wouldn't like to put anyone on a pedestal even if it were for a good reason. But then it might do something in the group dynamics. So
Once I had very friendly group. We were all very close, and it was advanced Russian group. So it's relatively big. It was 15 or 18 students. I don't remember exactly. But we would post all our essays online, and students would select their favorite and analyze it and explain why. But we were very open, so it was very special group. You wouldn't practice with every group, but they were so close, amazingly close. So, and it seemed appropriate, and they actually enjoyed it, and they would. Most of them were linguists, so it was also part of their openness.
Relationships are important because, for example, I've been in a foreign country and I really appreciated when people would say, Dave, you're not saying this correctly. And I would be thirsty for that, but not everybody was thirsty for that.
I agree. And teaching Russian language classes, and most of these classes are populated by freshmen who have very poor writing skills. It's funny that I have quite a few students who ask me to post good writing samples from other years, from other groups, so that they know how to do it. Because I usually, I should have used more second language teacher strategies, because when I write my comments, I sometimes go crazy and can't stop. And instead of doing this, I think instead of explaining why I don't like particularly this and why I'm not grading it as A+, we all know, all our students like so upset when it's not A+, even for three letters or 3-letter words. So then if you post sample, and it's kind of more clear what you want and what you judge as a good piece of writing. And I'm going to show you something. I hope you will appreciate it. Before we go to the literacies, I will pass it around, and I bet you can immediately tell whether it's. Please share. I didn't know that so many of you would come. Can you tell which one? You don't have to really read it through, but you can tell immediately which one is written by native speaker and which one is written by non-native speaker. And I'll bring us back to rhetorics, and you can see that it's on all counts. It's fluency, accuracy, general textual patterns, argument structure, narrative structure. So you can tell that pretty much you can hit all this, as well as you can hit planning. Like you can tell this person planned at least a little bit, and the other person hasn't planned. It's just jump into writing. And it was homework. So they had time and they had an opportunity to work on it, but again, some did and some did not. So any comments? Anyone wants to share their impressions from essay number 1, essay number 2? Again, it's a culture class, and I have students who are native speakers and non-native speakers of English, and they write pretty much in every class. And we just covered the topic on Russian heroic myth, and they were, you see the prompt, they were supposed to write on materials that we covered in class. And both of them write on this film, The Brother, and you can tell how they do it. Who planned, who knew what they're trying to say and why, and the other person just being, I don't know, reiterated. Right?
So, are you open for questions?
Yeah.
The, you know, there are so many cultural issues here. What makes a good advertisement in one culture may be a very poor advertisement in another culture. What makes a good scholarly paper in one culture may be completely inappropriate in another culture. What a good persuasive speaking in one culture might be totally
Exactly.
inappropriate in another culture. These are all different genres. How do you do this in a class? Do you teach each of these or any of these or?
I'm doing genre writing, and we have a couple of types of essays. We have reflection, we have response, and we have arguments. So argumentative writing. So they have to show 3 of those, and they also write course paper, which is academic style, research kind of paper, short but still research-like, and it all explains. We'll go through this through the course. But again, it doesn't mean that we all arrive at the same kind of level of production. But you can tell, yes, that pretty much on every level, on the level of ideas, on the level of composition, on the level how argument is constructed, those are, and I'm taking middle group performance. They're not the highest, they're not the lowest, but you can tell the differences are huge. And one is more effective, at least for those who are accustomed to English writing, and less effective.
I just have a point. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but I feel like, for example, when we look at both articles or essays, we can see like the second one from the beginning, there's a hook.
Yeah.
For the first one, it's like directly about the movie or what they watched. And I'm just wondering about that because like sometimes we tend to generalize that non-native speakers, they don't know how to, like prepare the, like the reader, and you have to write whatever. But sometimes it's not really the culture, but maybe they're not like they're not used to that kind of like style. So even, for example, if I'm talking about Arabic in specific, we still have to, like hook the reader and try something new at the beginning. But because maybe the students or the learner doesn't know how to do it in English, then they tend just to be direct and write about what they know, rather than just think about something, how can I, like think about like vocabularies, just as you said, they might not have that kind of like knowledge about it. So I don't know, it's a little bit, just as you said, like muddy to decide if whether it's culture or it's not, just they don't have experience.
But it looks there is definitely less thought put into writing. It's into, okay, whom I am writing to, what is the genre? It's basically, okay, I'm just, whatever I can, I just produce.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think it's the cognitive level, or maybe even overload cognitive. You have this topic, and you're so anxious that you don't really sit back and kind of don't have enough mental resources, cognitive resources, to approach it as a global task and self-pace yourself and self-manage yourself and tell yourself, okay, this is the genre. This is how I approach the genre. This is what I need for this kind of vocabulary I need, this kind of rhetorical structures that I need. And of course, through teaching you acquire it. But if you're not taught that you have to like really address all it by yourself, I don't think it's possible. So we as a teacher have to open up our students to this ability to go beyond the task and see the task from above and see like metacognitively what I need to accomplish it and what kind of task I'm doing. Not just jump into it and drown, but think about it and then I think I can like approach it with this and this in mind, and those are my goals, and those how I will achieve them, rather than It looks like it's definitely a lack of cognitive ability to see the global thing. Okay, I'll move on. So I will close this discussion on this huge body, like new body of studies on new voices, new literacies, on our necessity to be more open-minded about how our students live in their second languages, and that we have to be careful not to cut their wings, because this is their new language and it's theirs, it's not ours. It's theirs to use it, so let them have their identities and allow them construct their identities in this language. So I really love this researcher, Stephen Thorne. He does lots of studies on computers and second language acquisition. This is one of his relatively recent studies on how students actually develop very high skills outside of the classroom, how they're very creative, and how they are not recognized for these abilities. And he studied internet interest communities, fan fiction, Amicon, am I pronouncing it right? MovieCon, it's like this kind of cute thing. Comic-Con, yeah, thank you. So this cute thing and online games. So, and what he reported on studies, and also on his own study on some students who are really into it and who spend hours doing this, and who are recognized within those communities. They're socialized within those communities, and most of the time it's international communities, it's not just one language communities. And there, for their second language skills, and you can tell it's all English, they are creative people. They're not seen as some kind of learners who are deficient or who are marginalized. They're actually part of those big communities. And this is very empowering. So even with your little skills, you're still able to participate, and you're still creative, and everyone knows you on this side. And so what are the implications? Stephen argues for the necessity for us to encourage this creativity. I have very, honestly, I'm very conflicted about it. Because for me, it's just pigeonization. It's not just a vernacular, it's very narrow use of language, and I'm not sure how you can go out of it into anything. But on the other hand, I do know how difficult it is to motivate students, and how bored they are often in our classrooms when we bang them with the grammar books. So maybe that's something we can or should or might consider. Go create! I don't know. I haven't decided on this. That's all. Thank you. One thing